Hey folks, what's up? Thank you so much for tuning in to Zoom into Magic with me, Akshay. The pandemic so far has been widespread around the world, and the lockdown has been at least, for 2 months here in India. And probably by the time this comes out, it would be 2.5 months. But I have been using my time very productively. I have been interviewing some of the greatest minds, in our profession, meeting some of the greatest people, having discussed the greatest ideas. My lockdown has been extremely productive. I really hope that your lockdown has been productive as well. If you can create new acts, do it. Create new routines, do it. Watch lectures, do it. Read books, do it. And why am I sounding so excited today? I am sounding so excited because it couldn't get any better than this. Yes, I have the one and only Ken Weber with me, the one who has written this Bible of magic and mentalism, Maximum Entertainment 1 and 2.0, the latest one. And I am so excited for this because I know for a fact that this by far is going to be the most informative interview amongst all the 21 interviews that I've done. I mean no less for anyone else, but we all know what kind of an ocean this man's mind is. And it is such a delight for me that this is probably the first interview that he is doing, which is done via Zoom right now. So it's a huge, huge honor and a responsibility. And I'm very excited for Ken Weber. Ken, are you there?
I am here, Akshay. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really an honor for me. Thank you for being on the show, Ken.
After that introduction, I have to leave. I can't possibly live up to that, but thank you.
I'm sure the game has just begun, and the masterclass in entertainment and in real world knowledge has just begun. And I wouldn't want to waste a single minute of your time, Mr. Weber. So, are you ready for it? Let's dive right into it.
Let's do it.
All right. Now, here's the thing. Can we all have been performing, either as a full-time profession or a hobby? Of course, as your hierarchy of entertainment suggests that, there are different chunks. There are hobbies, then there are part-time performers, and then there are full-time performers. In all of those categories, the one thing that's common is the yearning for reactions, the yearning for applause. But here's the issue. Here's my problem. The problem is that most performers, and I mean it, most performers, instead of earning the applause, they start begging for the applause. Like even if the act is going dull, the act is going dead, they would still tell the audience that, applaud, 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 please applaud, applaud, now applaud. And maybe once or twice is okay. But throughout the show, like, continuously asking for it, like, beyond one point, it literally sounds like you're begging for an applause. Should performers beg for applauses? That's my first question to you.
That's a heavy-duty first question. That should be like the 18th question. But you started with it, so I'll have to deal with it. Of course not. Applause should come naturally. At the end of a routine or a trick, there can be something to indicate I've just finished this.
Yes.
And maybe a quick bow of the head, just a nod or a thank you to the spectator.
Right.
The audience should know that the trick is over, and if they like it, at least applaud at that moment.
Right.
But of course, you're right that there are too many performers who ask for applause in a very obvious way, and
Right.
it's just annoying,
Right.
and that should never be done. And I'll just say, I'll jump ahead. The way to get rid of that
Right.
is to do what you and I are doing here, which is I have an iPhone set up in front of me,
Right.
and you're recording it. I'm not recording it, but
Right.
once you start recording your shows,
Right.
you hopefully, if you sit down and watch objectively,
Right.
and you do it frequently, and it's very difficult to watch yourself.
Right.
I hate watching myself.
Right.
But if you do that, hopefully you can see, that was awkward right there, what I just did. Take a note down. Don't do that way.
Right.
So that is one way, probably the best way to not do what the audience will realize is
Right.
certainly in the English language, what we call cheesy,
Right.
and
Right.
magicians are frequently cheesy where they're obviously asking for applause
Right.
that they may or may not have earned.
That's the term cheesy over there. So they shouldn't do, of course. Now, what is the alternative? What could be the not just the applause cue, but how does one really go about earning a genuine, a good, loud, thunderous applause? Because my core belief is that if you are good, the audience will let you know. What's your
Yeah,
take on that?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's exactly right. If you're good, the audience will know. And the as I said earlier, just a moment ago, the routine is structured so that there's an ending. And once there's an ending, it should be clear to the audience. Now, you and I are both mentalists, so
Yes.
frequently we are dealing with another human being. We can't
Mhm.
read our own minds; that would be dull. So we have to read the mind of someone. We get that the first name was Dolores or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, and let's hear it for Julia,
Right.
whatever whoever you. And that's a clear signal to the audience. This part of the show has finished.
Right.
If it's a magic act, the bird appears or
Mhm.
the rope is restored. Ta-da! There's a moment.
Right.
You don't say ta-da. You don't. You know, but you hold up for display something. You
Mhm.
point, and each act is going to be different. So I do now direct and I help coach many people.
Mhm.
So it's really a bit difficult for me to say do it this way
Mhm.
because not only is it different for every performer,
Mhm.
it's different for every moment in the show.
Right.
So I'll back away from saying how to do it.
Mhm.
It's what not to do that's more important. If you
Okay.
get rid of the mistakes, if
Mhm.
you get rid of the mistakes, I think the applause will come naturally.
Right.
But the main thing is to not be obvious about asking for applause.
Mhm.
The exception to that, of course, is at the very end, you
Mhm.
let them know, my name is Ken Weber. Thank you very much. And you take your bow.
Wow.
And, that is obviously you're saying, I'm done. Hope you enjoyed it.
Right.
You know,
Right. And the applause should come as a reflex action rather than a deliberate
abs- absolutely. The audience, there's nothing worse than sitting in an audience and realizing I have to applaud now.
command.
No,
Right.
you
Right.
should
Right.
applaud because you have no other choice.
Right.
I
Right.
once read, the a standing ovation used to be very rare.
Right.
When I was a full-time performer, I frequently got standing ovations,
Mhm.
and I put that all over my
Mhm.
literature because they were rare.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know about India or other parts of the world, but certainly in America,
Mhm.
standing ovations have become very cheap, and that's a
Oh.
shame. And the reason I'm bringing it up,
Mhm.
they're cheap, meaning they're frequent.
Right. Right. Right.
And I bring it up because I read a theater critic's review
Mhm.
saying the same thing. This is going back probably 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay.
And he said correctly that a standing ovation should come from an audience member because you are just levitated off your seat. You are
Right.
so thrilled with emotion
Right.
that you must applaud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a natural standing ovation.
Right.
Um, but just the end of the show or the end of a routine should just inherent
Mhm.
moment that says internally,
Mhm.
I have to show my appreciation for what I just saw.
Right.
Yeah, it
That's
should
how
it should not be painted in big bold letters. Applaud now.
right. 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 It's like you.
Metaphorically.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's make that clear for everyone. It's like you one must feel so overwhelmed with the performance of what they just witnessed that they don't really know how to,
Yeah.
express their excitement and their appreciation, and like just you just perfectly mentioned, levitate off their seats.
Right. Now in Maximum Entertainment 2.0,
Yeah.
which is the same book but revised and expanded, thank you. It's about 80
Yes.
pages longer than the original with lots of changes.
In the
I
second half.
mentioned,
Hmm.
yeah, especially the second half. I mentioned in there of a performer here in the New York area
Hmm.
who I was shocked when I first saw him
Hmm.
because um, he doesn't get any applause. He's a walk-around performer. He's mostly a walk-around performer. And Matt Furman is the name. And he just keeps performing good, very good close-up magic. And I realized, man, he's different from everybody else. But when I looked at the audience, they really liked him. And he had no applause lines. He just keeps going. From the coins to the cards to the strings to the levitation to whatever he's doing. So it just taught me that you can do a great show and get much less applause than you think. All that counts is the audience reaction when you say thank you and you leave either the area, the table that you're performing at, or the stage. The only thing that really counts is what happens at the very end, because that's what they remember the most, how they felt at the end.
Right. And you just mentioned that, if you cut out all the mistakes, then, it's something that, gives you a genuine applause if the mistakes are cut out. Now, speaking of that, when you cut out the mistakes which haven't even happened yet, what I'm speaking about is while scripting your show, when you genuinely cut the crap out of the show, if you're scripting it, I believe that makes a world of a difference. I would love you to speak a bit about, let me give you the example, which you've also mentioned in the book, Daryl performing the jacks, I believe the trick with the jacks, where he mentions, okay, take the card, now put it back on the deck. That's a great spot. And you very nicely have mentioned that what's so great about an adult placing the card back on top? What's so great about it? And I really realized that, this is a man, like I'm talking about you, that this is a man who genuinely monitors each and every word, not just of others. Imagine if he's so critical about others, lines and performances, because he's mentioning director's notes. I can imagine how hard you must be on yourself as a performer. So tell me about that, about the scripting and cutting the crap out, and why should we do it, and why is it so important?
Great point. In thinking about what I'd be talking about today, so this is my first, maybe only one, I don't know if I'll do others, during the pandemic.
Okay.
So many of our friends in show business, whether it's magic, mentalism, or anything related to show business, are suffering. No audience. Some people have figured out how to do Zoom shows and so on. But this is really a time to be productive.
Right.
Meaning you have this time now. To me, one of the most important things, other than practicing your sleights or your moves, is to get your script down. It's a very difficult process for many people. But it's much easier now than it used to be in the past, because you can take your iPad or your iPhone and you can dictate. Young people tend not to do it. I use it all the time. You just press that little microphone next to the space bar, and you can dictate, and it gets 95% of your words correctly. And so you can dictate your show, and then you look at your words. The reason for a script is not to follow the script word for word. Now, obviously, here we're talking about talking performers, platform performers. You don't want to be a robot on stage, but when you have the script, two things happen. One is you know what you're doing. You can always, if you make a mistake, you go back to it. But more importantly, you can look at it and say, wait a minute, do I really need to say that? As I write in the book, and by the way, for people who don't know the book, the subtitle is Director's Notes for Magicians and Mentalists. Because that was my background in theater. Directors sit in the audience and they watch, and then during rehearsal, and they give you notes. Do this, don't do that. So when you script out something, you now have the opportunity that you may have never had in your life to really look at what you're actually saying. And by the way, this is why dictating it is better, because otherwise, if you write it just out of your head, you may leave out what you actually say. So
because your body reacts in a different way.
If you dictate it as if you're on stage, you'll get a much better sense of what you actually say. And it's even somewhat different than just watching it on video, because seeing it in black and white on a screen gives you a different sense of those words are cliche words, or those words don't make sense, or those words were repeated 3 or 4 times, and I don't need to keep repeating it. Or those words don't work because they don't really reflect what's happening at the moment. So the silver lining of a pandemic is not only that you can work on your act in general ways, but you can do something that most performers don't do, which is to write that script, get it down on what we call paper, get it down on screen or something, and really study it and say, is every word here? And I point out in the book, musicians, certainly composers, work on every single note.
Right.
In a long, performance piece, a concert, a symphony. Every single note is important. Well, we're composers. We compose an act. And if the act is made up of words, in great part, every word is like a note. Do I need that note? Do I need that word?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's literally like music. It's free flowing. And if you leave out a note, it will and it should sound off tune. So that tells you that something is not right.
Or if you have excess notes, excess words.
Exactly.
Right.
And you mentioned about, the subtitle of the book, Director's Notes for Magicians and Mentalists. And I believe the story goes back to you being first, asked to take down notes and put it like delivered in a lecture form during the PEA conventions. And eventually you put together a compilation of, a much more organized, binded book format. The book which we hold today in our hands. And while you were conducting, these observations within, while you were in PEA, while you were making notes, you were watching performers, there was one moment when it was not at PEA probably, it was at a different convention, but there was one moment when you were witnessing a trick being done live and you probably didn't pay any attention to it. You didn't care about it much. It didn't appeal to you. But when you saw that on DVD, you said, "Oh wow, this is the best thing! People should buy it. If you really love torn and restored card, you'd be a fool not to buy this DVD." And when you watched the DVD, you realized, "Hey, wait a second! I've seen this live. I'm loving this right now on DVD." And I didn't like it while I was watching live. The live version was dull. It was off-putting, putting people to it was a lullaby version of the effect, the performance of it, and the theory in principle everywhere is that live has a greater impact. Like magic or mentalism has a greater impact when you're witnessing it live as opposed to video or DVD. Tell me about this realization of yours. And this was a ripped and restored card by yes. Tell me about that.
It was quite a while now, but when I first wrote Maximum Entertainment, most of what I was writing about was based on either seeing my mentalist friends perform or just seeing lots of video.
Right.
So that was back to the original version. And a friend of mine gave me the DVD, and he said, "Here, this is I found this interesting," and I watched it, and I said, "Oh, that's a great torn and restored." And then as I watched it, I realized I'm in the third row. I was there when it was done. It was a small convention, so there were maybe 30, 40 people in that room. And so I describe, I won't say his name or anything like that, but I realized as I was watching it, it was just a puzzle. It was just presented as a puzzle. So my mind was drifting away. It was only when I saw the DVD where it's right in front of me and I realized the method is brilliant. It's an excellent torn and restored. It's by a Frenchman. I actually do forget his name. So it's an excellent routine.
The name has been mentioned in the book, by the way.
It's in the book. Yeah, it's in the book. So it's an excellent routine with an excellent method. But when he was doing it for me live, it was just, now I'm tearing it, hold this. There was no, he was just describing what he was doing. Maybe it was the language barrier because he wasn't terribly fluent in English at that point. But there, you're right. Normally live would be much better than seeing
Right,
it on
right,
DVD.
right.
But as I was there, I just couldn't get into it at all. So it just is a lesson in a great trick doesn't necessarily stand on its own. There has to be what else is there in the trick.
Right.
You know, am I communicating my humanity to you? Do you understand who I am? Do you understand why this moment is important? Do you understand how difficult what is about to happen is?
Right.
Is there any humor? Is there anything dramatic here that I need to bring out? Is there something fascinating about what's about to happen? Well, if there's none of those, just here's a card being torn, and now I'm tearing it the other way. Well, I can see that. And if I lose the train of thought for a moment, I'm just thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. I'm gone. I'm mentally out of the room.
Right.
So that's why, again, every moment counts. Every moment counts. A key precept of the book, as you well know, is control every moment.
Yeah.
Every moment. Not most moments. Control every moment. When you're on stage for 10 minutes or an hour and a half. When you lose the audience, it's very hard to get them back.
Right. So controlling every moment is what you mentioned over here. And I also believe you just mentioned about, him not really performing it in the sense of, communicating humanity. There was no storytelling. And you were saying that basically, I believe what you meant was that it was probably like a dealer's demo. Like, this is a product, this is what it does, and then the rest is up to you. Is what I call a dealer's demo performance.
Ironically, I also point out, and by the way, for those of you who haven't read the book, there are 6 pillars of entertainment success.
Yes.
And you need all 6 to really have a successful show.
Right.
But I do point out as well, ironically, that one of the best performances, sometimes the best performance you can see is a dealer demo.
Right.
Sometimes. Why? Because they strip away all the nonsense.
Right.
And they just do the amazing thing.
Right.
I tear it up, and then you do that, and it's back.
Right.
As opposed to now 6 weeks, the first trick I ever learned, I saw a magician, he tore it up, and there's all this extra stuff that takes away from the pure magic. So sometimes, certainly not always, the dealer demo can be one of the best performances because it's just pure magic, get right to the point, boom, and there's the end of the trick.
Right.
We never know.
And since you just mentioned about, the dealer's demo sometimes could be really impactful because most of the nonsense and what's not required is completely stripped out, and only the core, effect remains. I want to mention 2 performers right now who have had that impact in magic. I'll go, sequentially. First one, I believe, is David Blaine. So do you agree that David Blaine actually did apply this principle? He mostly stripped away all the how do I put this, the jibber jabber around the
he
effect.
stripped away all the show business stuff. Show business. And again, in the book, and as you know, I tried to make the book as practical as possible.
Absolutely.
We're talking a lot of theory, but I wrote the book based on actually seeing people and giving them my notes, and everything was practical. Do this, don't do that. And to make my point, I used 3 examples: David Copperfield, David Blaine, and Kreskin. Kreskin is not as well known as he used to be, but to mentalists, we certainly know his name. But he was a big star in the U.S. For about 20 or 30 years. David Blaine, in his first TV special, stripped away all traditional show business.
Yes.
Just take a card, okay, put it back, don't, look in your shoe, or whatever whatever he did. It's like the guy I mentioned before, Matt. They take away all the stuff that you see at magic conventions or in the old magic tapes.
Right.
Excuse me, of traditional showbizy stuff. And David Blaine stripped down to just, here's the pure magic, and as if it's sort of happening to him at the same moment.
Right.
So it was brilliant, and the TV people who made him a star, he made himself a star, but in addition, the TV people around him didn't focus on him as much as they focused on the audience reaction.
Reactions, yeah.
Reactions are what we live for.
Right.
Yeah. And I have a whole section in the book, as you know, on
Yes.
reaction.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the reactions are and how to get those reactions.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Without reactions, we're just talking to ourselves.
And if I remember correctly, the reactions were rapt attention. Am I right?
Rapt attention, yes.
Attention. There was astonishment, and then there was extraordinary moment.
You're mixing up a couple things.
Okay.
Yeah.
What am I mixing?
So in the
Rapt
hierarchy,
attention, drama, and laughter, I believe. These were the three.
Yeah, drama, laughter, fascinating information.
Yeah.
And everything that you do, certainly if you're speaking, has to be targeted to those list of reactions. So as I'm talking, is this fascinating? Is it dramatic? Is it personal in a way that's fascinating? Is it funny? You can't just talk for no reason. Or is it a necessary instruction?
Right.
Take this bottle and examine it, make sure there's nothing in it now. So there's necessary instructions, and then everything else you say should have a targeted reaction. Is it funny? Is it necessary for the moment? Is it dramatic? Is it heartwarming? Is it fascinating? Is it informative? Otherwise, it's just filler, and the less filler you have, the better off you are.
And even if you do strip away most of the show busy stuff, you could still have rapt attention as one of the reactions, and a lot of drama as one of the reactions. If I'm not wrong, like they won't be laughing or crying, but you could still have the drama of it. I mean, Blaine had a lot of drama. That's what I feel.
Absolutely, and rapt attention means if they're they're really into it. I should look over here where the camera is.
Yeah.
Wow, that's rapt, R-A-P-T.
Yes.
I want to make sure my American accent isn't getting lost.
No, it's not. It's all fine.
So you want people totally engrossed, involved in what you're saying. That's rapt attention.
Right.
And that's just one of the desired reactions. It's one of the best ones, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. And I did mention that I'm going to mention two performers who have done this in the most impactful way, stripping away the show busy stuff and, keeping it to the core content. One was David Blaine, and here's the second one. Probably you're not expecting this. Kathy? Yeah.
From my book?
Yep. Kathy, the one who works in WEBER Asset Management. So
WEBER Asset Management.
That's Kathy Daly or Kathy Daly? How do you pronounce that?
Daly. Kathy Daly.
Kathy Daly.
Every day.
Yes, like every day. Daly. Yeah. So Kathy Daly. Tell us about Kathy Daly and the invisible deck.
Yeah. Well, that's very, very funny you mentioned that, because I think I call them case studies.
Case studies.
And in the new version, there's an extra case study. Yeah. There's a new one.
Rick Lax. Extra one. Yeah.
Well, that really threw me for a loop. David Blaine and then Kathy.
Yes.
This goes back a good number of years ago. We have an office holiday party in December. I have 6 or 7 employees.
Right.
And so she said, teach me a trick. I want to do a trick. So I taught her the invisible deck, because that's an amazing trick that's also easy to learn.
Right.
And I talk about how she did it perfectly. And there was the card turned upside down. And somebody said, do it again. Now, in my teaching her, I didn't teach her the magician's mantra, never repeat a trick. So, okay. And she put the deck under the table, name a card, 4 clubs. Right. Oh, here it is. It's upside down again. And then let me try it, somebody else said. let me name a card. And she did it a 3rd time. The last time I let her do it. And it went over even better. And the reason it went over so strongly, because there was no showbiz. It was just the pure astonishment. There was no patter. There was nothing to distract from the amazing moment of, you just named any card. Look, it's the only card I turned over when I put it under the table, ostensibly. So that's very funny you say that. Kathy still works for me. She's been working for me about 32 years as my vice president.
Yes. And do mention to her post this interview that, you know, it's you and David Blaine. You both have revolutionized magic
Very, very
forever.
funny.
but
I
but but
certainly
but
will.
also true, funny, but true. That's the whole point. That it's actually
Yes.
like what she did was genuinely something to her.
And the lesson we learned from that, and I have this in 2.0, which I didn't have in the first version, I sort of changed. I evolved over the 12 or 14 years between the versions to say that when you are learning new material, and again, this is new for the new book,
Yeah.
Start with a stripped down version.
Right.
It's good to have a script. It's good to have a script, but write a script if you want for your new trick.
Right.
Put it aside, and the first 3 or 5 or 10 times you perform it, do as stripped down a version as possible. Why?
Right.
Because if the trick doesn't go well, you don't know if it's because of the trick itself or because of your pattern, you know, your little play that you wrote around the trick.
Right. Right.
So do the trick a number of times first, get into the methodology, get that out of your system, that it works perfectly. And then if it works and you want to keep it, then you start applying the routine that you wrote, the script that you wrote for that routine.
Right, right. And the more you speak about, you know, scripting and routining and going, you know, in a step-by-step procedure, the more it makes me realize how less, you know, most magicians actually are interested, you know, in these procedures and even in discussing, you know, these things as productive. Like, for example, I'm sure many of the places where you must have lectured about these things, mentioning these points, some of the magicians must have asked you before the lecture, or probably maybe after the lecture, that are you going to teach us something? You know, probably when you mention I'm writing a magic book, so are there going to be any new tricks, any new routines? You know, I have given a lot of lectures here in India based on, you know, branding, marketing, you know, your human communication. I get asked this question so often by magicians before they want to buy a ticket to attend the lecture. They ask me, so is there going to be any teaching in the lecture? And I say, what do you mean if there's going to be any teaching? It's a lecture. It's supposed to be, you know, taught. You're supposed to learn. No, but are you going to teach anything in the lecture?
I know. When I first told some friends that I was writing a book,
let's just hold this. Let's hold both of these. Yes.
And there were going to be no tricks in the book. Well, I don't think you can sell it. I don't think magicians will buy it. I can happily say right now, it's one of the best-selling books of all time.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I barely ever advertised it. I advertised it like a little bit in the beginning. After that, it just kept selling through word of mouth. I can tell you honestly, some of the biggest names in magic and mentalism tell me they read it once a year. They go back and read it once a year.
You could mention a name if you're okay with that. Like,
it's not right. It's not fair to, because people, you know, they told me in confidence. But it's the point is, it's sold and it's been reprinted. The original version was reprinted 5 times, and now the new book, we printed thousands of copies, and they're selling out quite quickly. Again, no advertising at all.
Yeah.
So it's word of mouth. One magician telling another, you gotta read the book. But when I first broached the idea to a couple of friends that I was going to write a book with no tricks, oh, nobody's going to buy it.
Right. And it's one of the best-selling books in magic.
Thank goodness I was able to prove them wrong. But you're exactly right. They told me it won't sell.
Right.
Because there's 2 things in magic. There's the trick, and then there's everything else.
Right.
What you just mentioned was, like me, you talk about the everything else.
Right.
The trick is the brick, and the mortar, the cement, is what holds the structure together. That's the everything else. So you have to have the bricks, but then you have to have everything else to hold the wall up.
Right.
And that's what apparently you and I teach, which is the everything else. Now, having said that, we have to remember, in the pyramid of magic, at the very top were the pros, as I was for many years, and you are, but below in the base are the hobbyists.
Yeah.
And they have every right to just have fun with magic.
Right.
You know, the key is, and I think it was just Jeff McBride in a lecture just the other day. Once they make that transition from hobbyist to pay me for this show. Well, now you're in the ranks of professional. And once you step out and say, give me money for my show, you're joining us. And now you represent all other magicians.
Right.
So you have an obligation. You have an obligation because you represent me.
Yes.
When you go out. Because the average Indian or American has not seen much live magic. Maybe they've seen 1 or 2 live magicians in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And if you screw up, that hurts me. It hurts everybody else. You see, if they see a bad comedian or a bad singer, they won't say, we don't need any more singers or any more comedians or any more dancers.
Right.
Because now I know they're terrible. No, but with a magician or a mentalist, if we screw up, they'll never book any one of us again.
Absolutely.
So once you join the ranks of professional, it's your obligation to get out there and get that everything else.
Right.
The stuff you talk about, the stuff I talk about, it's very important. We all have enough tricks.
Yes.
We need the other stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And while mentioning, everything else, you did, do this a couple of times. And that also mentally gave me another picture that this means everything else, but parallelly, on a more downside, this also means something else. This is a different circle over here. This is the magician's bubble, the bubble that magicians live in. And that bubble, it basically stops them from genuinely, improving, getting, in touch with the real world, and eventually reaching a point of end, where they regret everything that, they probably, when they realize the real world is different. I want to ask you this, that because, we are so smoothly and naturally getting drifted towards this, that why does this magician's bubble exist and what makes it grow bigger?
Very profound statement. It's true. It's true. I just thought of the last convention I went to before the pandemic. I saw a young woman magician. There's lots more females now, thankfully. And she was very good. And some of the advice I gave, but then she started doing the same routine she showed me. She showed some of her Magic Club members. And I heard them giving her advice. What I'm about to say, I will regret saying. So you decide whether you want to leave it in or not.
I will leave it. I leave it, everything in it. Yeah.
And then she wanted some direction and coaching. And I said, the first thing I want you to do is to stop going to the Magic Club.
Yes.
Now, Magic Clubs are wonderful. You make great friends and you can learn the tricks. But once you have enough tricks, getting advice, getting feedback from people who are not professionals, who are not really out there proving themselves, can hurt you. And that's the bubble you're talking about.
Right.
So a very, very, very simple example is, and it's in the book, okay, you pick a card and you're about to reveal it. What's the name of your card?
Right.
No human being says, what's the name of your card? They say, what was the card you saw?
What was the card?
What card are you thinking of?
Yeah.
What card was it? Only magicians say, what was the name of your card? Cards don't have names, but magicians say, what was the name of your card? Why? Because in the Magic Club that they grew up in, all the magicians said, okay, what's the name of your card?
Right.
So that's one tiny example. There's lots.
Right.
And so you see magicians imitating other magicians. So it's natural. So once you decide you want to move up the ladder of show business and you want to get better, you've got to make sure the circle that you're in is the circle you want to be in.
Yes.
Again, there are great people in Magic Clubs. If it's your hobby, if it's your passion, enjoy yourself. I started with Magic Clubs. But once you decide you want to move up, you want to surround yourself with other successful performers who have proven themselves. How? By getting repeat dates, by getting those dates where the people say, I will pay you money and I will tell other people about you and they should pay you money too.
Right, right,
That
right,
says much more than
right.
getting applause or even an award at a magic convention. That's how
Absolutely.
you that's how you know you're good.
Absolutely.
Again, again, the pyramid is this, and it's bigger at the bottom, and there's wonderful people at magic conventions and magic clubs. I don't mean to put them down. I'm just saying if you personally, any person who's watching this wants to go up, you've
Mm.
got to separate yourself at some point and
Right,
say, I want to be around people who have been
right.
up at the top.
Right, right, right. And since you mentioned about being away and being in, in and out, like being subjective, according to the condition and situation, whether you want to be in within the clubs or not within the clubs, or in that circle. One of the things that I've noticed is when even when someone is trying to critique you for your own good, you might be confused whether to take it in that way or not, because you never really know when a magician is giving you criticism. Would that be coming from his own school of thought, or would that be from an actual practical, well-wisher's point of view? So how does one go about, if they are in the magic club, if they are meeting magicians frequently, and I'm going to be like verbatim about something that you mentioned in the book. So how does one go about giving criticism and taking criticism?
Again, one of the new things in version
True.
2.0, thank
Yes.
you,
Yes.
is the section on how to give criticism or notes,
Mm-hmm.
and how equally important, how to receive
Receive
criticism
criticism.
and
Yes.
notes. Yeah.
Yes.
And the average person will think, well, I know how to do that. I certainly know how to receive criticism. You
Mm.
don't.
No.
You don't. And so I have 10, I think 10 or 11 or whatever it is, bullet points for
Mm-hmm.
each one, the proper way to give criticism
Mm-hmm.
and the proper way to receive. And I didn't just write this sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
I've given criticism,
Mm-hmm.
critiques
Mm-hmm.
to literally hundreds of performers.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, and I watched their reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I've received notes myself.
Right.
And so I really spent months thinking about how to get this down on paper. So
Mm-hmm.
the 10 points of the proper way to give criticism, the proper way to receive criticism.
Mm.
For example, number one is always in private.
Always in private.
Always in private. People will say, well, here, these are my friends. You can talk in front of them. No, you can't. You walk off to the side and you say, and you always start with the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you did right. I really enjoyed your outfit. That white jacket you wore really set you off against the black backdrop.
Right.
Whatever it is, you find things that they did right. Sometimes it's difficult, but you can always find a few things to say that you felt were clever or smart or funny or well done. And then you give your criticism. I won't go through all 10, but I give an example of, in terms of receiving criticism, you respond as little as possible, other than saying thank you, because what you hear that moment of getting the criticism or the notes, director's notes, is going to be different than a day or 3 or 10 days later, when it marinates in your mind.
Right.
Because at first you put up a mental, no, yes, thank you very much, but I know that works. It's only down the road, typically. Oh man, he was right. I really shouldn't have said that or done that.
Right.
Or would be stronger if I considered doing it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and again, this came up earlier in the conversation. You can get criticism that is wrong, that, even 10, 20 days later, you decide to reject, and that's perfectly fine too. But as long as you have a reason, a specific reason why you believe that criticism isn't correct.
Correct. And something earlier, or something also that, you've just mentioned earlier, just a few minutes back, in fact, is about, creating that repeat value. I believe, you don't get repeated bookings if you're not in the right circle and not delivering it, the right way. So how does one go about creating the perfect repeat value of a show? And let me tell you this, there's a company, a corporate company. I am a corporate performer here in India, and there's a corporate company called Ultra Tech. Okay, they are a cement company. Ultratech in the past 16 years, no, in the past 6 years, sorry, in the past 6 years, has repeated me 21 times. So when I go on stage for an Ultratech show within these 6 years, each time I go, I feel like I don't know why they're repeating. I don't know exactly why, but I must be doing something right. Something must be going right. And there are other companies also. Then I realized that when I make my list of corporate clients, they are not much, but there are a lot of shows because there's 10 from one, there 11 from one, 21 from one, 13 from one. And when someone asks me that, are you signed by these companies because you keep doing these shows very frequently? We see them on Facebook. I said, no, they just keep repeating. And I realized that,
They
this,
book you one at a time.
yes, yes,
They book this show, then they book you again, then they book you
yes,
again. It's not a
yes.
long-term contract.
No, it's not. It's not.
Which speaks very well for you.
Yeah, and that's true. It's all true, all on Facebook. Every show, every picture is uploaded. So there is no bullshitting happening here. And that really makes me curious as well, because I believe, now to my experience, I have come to the conclusion that repeat shows are the only way you can survive and thrive in show business and in mentalism business. But I want to know
Yeah.
from you, what is it that creates the perfect repeat value?
Well, that's a very broad question.
Mm.
The first and most important thing is a great show.
Right.
And you only get a great show by doing lots of flight time, of doing lots of shows.
Right.
And
right.
so you do the free shows, on your way up, and you do the low paying shows. You
Yeah.
just need as much experience as you can get.
Right.
Now, in addition to having a great show, which
Right.
you must have, which probably clearly you do, I have a section of this book that I think is unique on what to do before the show, how to handle things before the show. And there's more in this than in the original version.
Right.
Your contract writer, what your needs are, what you send to them. Here's how you can help me set up the show. So they get a feeling of professionalism. They get a feeling of ease. They're at ease, knowing that they've hired someone who's going to make their problems go away.
Right.
Also in the book is a section, that's a short section, after the show.
Right.
How do you handle life with your clients and your audience after the show? What do you say to them? What do you not say to them after the show?
Right.
So the fact that you're getting repeat dates says that your before, during, and after the show techniques are working.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I give some practical advice there about very specific things to do before and after the show.
Right.
I have seen people who have reasonably good shows, but not great shows, get repeat bookings because they know how to handle life after the show. They make everybody feel more special than they were on stage. They know how to polish the apple, so to speak. So they plant memories of a better show than actually happened, which is a skill itself. But if you can do that, you're ahead of the game. But I've seen masters of that, people who have adequate shows, but are great glad handing, an American expression, great in terms of making people feel that the show was even better than it actually was.
So that's a triple reality, because dual reality happened on stage. Now there's another layer of reality happening post the show, which is
that's a mentalism expression, but correct.
Yeah, there you go. And now once someone has done everything right, before show, during show, after show, polished it, been in the right circle, done everything right, and now is getting repeat bookings, and now has made money and made a fortune, he's still, being a magician or a mentalist, is mostly very bad at saving that money. And even if the performer ends up saving some money, or quite a lot of money, there goes a mindvention or a PEA or a Blackpool convention, or Magic Live. You go into a convention, you go into the stalls, and boom, there goes the impulsive buying, and all the money is just gone. And after a year, He opens up the drawer and says, "What is this? Oh yeah, I bought this at a convention. Expensive, but I never used it." And this way, the cycle keeps repeating again and again. And magicians tend to become very bad money management people. And this is where I seamlessly transition from Ken Weber, the writer of Maximum Entertainment, to Ken Weber, the president of Weber Asset Management and the author of a book I also own called Dear Investor, What the Hell Are You Thinking? Could we bring that book on screen right now? You probably have
Dear
it.
investor, what the hell are you doing?
What the hell are you doing? Yes. Yeah. And you remember when I bought this book, I actually sent you a selfie, a picture of me holding this book and Maximum Entertainment together. And you actually read that.
That's why I thought we had met previously. Apparently, we've never met in person. But now that you had not brought that up, but now that you say that, that was a year or two or three ago.
Yes, yes.
That's why I thought we had met.
Right.
I was impressed. Yes, I have a handful of magicians who've read my magic book, or books, version 1 and 2, and then who've also read the money book.
Right.
Look, Akshay, I appreciate all you're saying, but we are talking during a pandemic. I hope to have never had said to say this, what I'm about to say. And by the way, we've had no tricks, so we've lost half the audience by now. But the ones who've stayed are the smart ones.
Yes.
Look, I've said all throughout my financial career, for those of you who don't know, I am president of WEBER Asset Management, which is a money management firm based here in New York. And I manage literally hundreds of millions of dollars for other people.
You do.
So I've talked about clients for all these years, long before anybody heard of coronavirus or COVID.
Right.
Having a rainy day fund. And I used to say 3 to 6 months. And the reason I said it to everybody, but I certainly said it to my performer friends. Because Akshay, if you break your leg, God forbid, if you come down with some sort of medical problem and you can't go out and perform, that's it. That's your income.
Right.
So whether it's COVID, or something that only happens to Akshay or Ken Weber, suddenly, boom, the curtain comes down and there's no income if you're a full-time performer.
Yes.
So that's why I used to say 3 to 6 months of money that's off to the side in a bank account that you do not touch. 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, it's now different. Now that I realize there are pandemics that can happen, and who knows how long this will last? Who knows how long it will be until performers are out in front of audiences, getting paid? I'm now changing my advice: 6 to 12 months of living expenses.
Yes.
Off to the side in a bank. For many people, especially performers, you're right. You go to a convention, those shiny objects have your name on them. Buy me, buy me, buy me. I will definitely use that. That trick is the best trick I will ever. I'm buying it, and it goes in the drawer. And 3 years later, what the hell is this? I have no idea what this was. And it happens to every single magician or mentalist out there.
Like initially it says, buy me, buy me. 3 years later, you pick up the same thing. It says, dear investor, what the hell are you doing?
Exactly. It says the dealer made money, you lost money. So it's that advice for building up a rainy day fund, and hopefully beyond that you invest something, is more critical now than it's ever been, certainly in my lifetime.
Right.
Where no performer is out there performing for live audiences. A tiny handful have figured out how to do Zoom shows.
Right.
And that's great. But even those who are doing Zoom shows are certainly making only a fraction of what they were making previously. So it's a shame that this has happened. But many people are doing those creatively. But again, to circle back to what I said earlier, hopefully you're using this time productively.
Yes.
Let me tell you, as I prepared for this, I'm going to jump into my own little speech here.
Please do.
Yeah. you want to use this time productively at the end of every day as you wrap up your day, whether it's going to bed or, whatever is the end of your day.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to say to yourself, and I did this throughout my life,
Mm-hmm.
especially as I was building my
Mm-hmm.
two parallel careers. Well, they weren't parallel. One was show business for many years first, and then the financial life. You have to be able to say to yourself at the end of the day that I do three things that moved my career forward.
Right, right.
Three real things
Mm-hmm.
that moved my career forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't say that, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you wrote your script,
Mm-hmm.
you practiced, you read a book that will help you get better,
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just binging television, just
Right.
watching movies,
Right.
which you have to do some of that too.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, there should be one, two, hopefully three things that you can say to yourself, I did that, I did that, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
That's important advice.
Right, right.
Whether there's a pandemic or not. Every
Mm-hmm.
day, what did I do as a professional to make my career move forward?
Right, right, right.
Did I write a new contract writer?
Mm-hmm.
Did I learn a piece of material?
Mm-hmm.
Did I spend half an hour working on my moves? Whatever it is, you want to say, I can't just waste time in my life. I have to have fun. I have to have a balance. But if I want to move ahead, understand that the Jeff McBrides, I just saw him do a lecture the other day, the David Copperfields, they were obsessed with getting better and better.
Right, right.
All the people I know who have reached the top for a chunk of their life, their early part of their life or throughout their lives, they were obsessed with getting better. Even David Copperfield, the number one financial success in magic, has lectured, and I saw him do a lecture in New York. It's mentioned in the book. Constantly looking at his show and saying, what can we make better? With Chris Kenner and his team, they don't stop. So even David Copperfield is obsessed with moving forward, never being satisfied with where I am now. Where will I be in a year or 3 years?
Right. And speaking of David Copperfield in this context, I don't know if how many magicians know about this, but they must and they should know about this. That even David Copperfield is a smart investor. I believe, I don't know whether it's his own brainchild or it's the people who are advising him, but I believe there's still that one person who takes the final call. The final decision has to be David Copperfield himself. He actually owns 13 islands called Musha Key, right?
I think Musha Key is one island, and there's a resort there. But I think you're right that there's other islands out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there are 13 of those, if I'm not wrong. Those
I think something like
little,
that,
little islands, and he's turned that into, a plush resort, which people like Oprah Winfrey or Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg. Those people go in and they relax and they are cut off from the world, and he is making money from that as well. Like even that is putting money back in his pocket. When I look at all of these things, it reminds me of a book written by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and which speaks about assets and liabilities. Whether this thing, whatever, he explains it very simply. Anything that takes money out of your pocket is a liability. Anything that puts money in your pocket is an asset. That's the most basic version of it. For magicians, how would you say that they go about increasing their assets and decreasing their liability? And where should they invest their money, and how should they go about investing their money? Should it be stocks? Should it be shares? Should it be other things like other businesses? What would be your take on that?
Yeah, that's a difficult question for me to answer, because what happens in America is quite different than England or India or Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I'll just say this: magicians are known as poor money managers.
Yes.
I mean, I just see it all the time. Yeah. Again, because of the bright baubles that they see, and they must have that. One way to do it, to start achieving some financial success, is every time you get a paycheck, assuming you're working for money, is to say, I'm putting 10% or whatever you can into that rainy day fund. And once you've built up the rainy day fund, now you start investing. For me, I'm convinced that the best way to invest is stocks and through mutual funds. I know in England they call it unit investment trusts, where it's a basket of stocks. It's probably the same in India, unit investment trusts. I'm not
we
sure.
We call it mutual funds. Yeah, mutual funds. Yeah.
Oh, you have mutual funds. Okay. So instead of trying to pick one or two or 10 companies that you would have to follow, you want to get a basket of different stocks and bonds, so that if you have a few bad ones, it's not going to bring you down completely. You know, but the key is, again, it goes back to reading more. So even if you read a book like Dear Investor, What the Hell Are You Doing? or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you want to make yourself sophisticated. I became an investment person because as I was flying from gig to gig, from show to show around America, instead of reading another magic magazine, which I did read, I read Money Magazine, which was a magazine about money. And I educated myself about money. And more magicians and entertainers and entrepreneurs need to be better money managers, personal money managers for yourself. So if you could put 10 or 15% aside of every check that you get, every payment off to the side, that's step number one. And then have discipline about how you spend money. So I talk in the money book about how when I got married, my wife and I wrote down every expense, no matter how little, every expense. And that was on paper. Now you can do it on a spreadsheet. So there's actually programs that can do it for you.
So the moral to be taken here for magicians is, rather than focusing on just your doves and rabbits, also focus on bears and bears.
Bulls and bears.
Bulls and bears. Sorry, that's a slip of tongue. Yeah.
Exactly.
Bulls and bears.
You don't have to be a super investor, but even if you just put the money in the bank, as long as you become disciplined, money in the bank is not going to pay a lot. You're better off learning about stocks and bonds and mutual funds. But even if you just become disciplined about building up that nest egg, you need to do it, because you never know when the next pandemic to hit the society or the next problem that you have personally is going to hit. It could be around the corner. God willing, it doesn't happen to anybody we're talking to now, but things do happen. Things do happen. Life is unpredictable.
When it comes to finances, is there any one, necessary that, you must do this kind of a point that you'd like to make when it comes to finances for
I've already mentioned them. The most important thing is to have that rainy day cushion, that rainy day nest egg. That's first and foremost, because sadly, too many of my magician and performer friends are really struggling right now because their income just stopped and they had no cushion at all. So that is just heartbreaking. So again, it was 3 to 6 months before Corona. Now I'm saying 6 to 12 months untouched. You only use it when you absolutely need to. That's rule number one. And I say that to WEBER Asset clients. I say that to my magician friends, my mentalist friends, my dancer friends, my comedian friends. You've got to do that. Even people in the corporate world, you never know. And I'm sure many people we're talking to right now have corporate jobs. But now we know corporate jobs can disappear like that.
Yes.
And so everybody needs to have a rainy day fund.
So rainy day fund is a must-have. Everyone take 10%. In fact, take 50% off if you can, and store
whatever you can afford. You will never regret that decision.
Make your raincoat thicker. To stop every flow. That's awesome, and that brings us to the end of the interview. Ken Weber, thank you so much for doing this for all of us. You have done a great service today by doing this interview and putting out all the information from all of your heart. And I hope I really enjoyed interviewing you. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I hope you found the questions to be specific and context oriented.
This was good. This was not quite what I expected, and I mean that in the best way. I'm impressed with the way you've run this. I'm happy to know you're a fellow mentalist. We are a small part of the big magic world. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Hopefully it does some people some good. So that's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Weber. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
See you sometime in the future, I hope.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken Weber. Zoom into magic with Akshay.